We've all been there, in the dentist's chair, facing the news that we've lost a tooth, whether it's through extraction or for whatever reason. So now the discussion turns to replacing it. Your dentist starts talking about options like dental implants or bridges or dentures, and you probably don't want any dentures because they make you feel older. So your thoughts narrow to a bridge or an implant. And as your dentist explains the various possibilities, you don't really understand everything they're saying, so confusion starts to set in, and then the conversation shifts to cost. The price of a dental implant versus that of a dental bridge. And at that point, many people quickly decide against the implant because it's too expensive. But is that really the right decision? Well, hang around to the end of this video and I have a very interesting piece of information that might just swing your decision. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what is a dental implant, who can and cannot get one, and what are the advantages of having a dental implant, and what are the likely things that you can expect during the course of that treatment. Also, what are the costs likely going to be for this procedure? So a dental implant is essentially a little tiny titanium screw that will go into your bone or into your gum, and the general kind of journey that someone would have during the course of an implant is, firstly, there would be a surgical phase. That's the actual placement of the implant into your gum. Then secondly, we have to let the implant heal around the bone, and that process can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, and that's a process called osseointegration. Phase 3 then is to actually restore the implant, and that's putting a ceramic crown on top of the implant, which is going to start to look and feel like a natural tooth. So there are actually very few things that can completely rule you out from having a dental implant. And one of the first things that come to mind is that if you've had a cardiovascular event in the last 6 months, then you cannot have an implant. And when I say a cardiovascular event, that's something like a heart attack or having a stroke or even an ischemic event. You will not be able to have an implant until 6 months after. Kind of in that same group, I would also consider it if you are on anticoagulants or a blood thinner medication. These can also complicate the procedure a bit more. The next thing that will completely rule you out of having an implant is uncontrolled diabetes. And that's just a well-known fact that you will not heal as well after having the implant, and so there's quite a high risk of an unsuccessful placement. Another potential condition that can rule you out is something called osteoporosis, and it does depend a little bit on the severity of it. If you take bisphosphonates, which is a medication people take to try and help osteoporosis, if you take that by IV straight into your veins, then you may not be suitable for dental implants, because this would have a high chance of a complication of something called osteonecrosis of the jaw. Bisphosphonates can be taken as an IV, but they can also be taken as a tablet. And generally those that are taken as the tablet are not as strong as the ones that are given through the vein, but those risks are definitely still there. Another thing that will contribute to a potential failure is smoking, or if you're a smoker. That will increase the risk of implant failure quite significantly. It's not guaranteed to fail, but it is significantly higher. So I can hear the questions already being asked. So this is something that's more expensive. It's going to require a surgery. It's going to take longer to complete. So why would I get this over a dental bridge? Well, the big advantage of choosing an implant over anything else is that it's essentially an artificial root. And so you're going to help preserve the bone. And the big advantage of preserving bone is it's going to also help preserve your facial structure. Now, if you've only lost one tooth, then this isn't going to be a huge issue. But if you're missing a few teeth, then you might start to notice that sometimes your cheeks can start to collapse, or your face can start to look quite gaunt or thin as a result of having lost multiple teeth. But another big advantage of dental implants over, say, a bridge is that we don't have to do anything to the neighboring teeth or the adjacent teeth to the space. So if you're doing a bridge, we're going to have to polish down those teeth that are beside it into little pegs of themselves. and then put crowns over those, and then you'll have a false and artificial tooth that's attached to both of those teeth that's bridging that gap. And also versus a denture, dentures can be loose, they can slip, they can cause irritation, and you might have to start to pick and choose what you can eat. But with an implant, that's not really an issue. You could be eating steak or apples with an implant versus with a denture might not be as easy to eat those kinds of things. So there's far more stability and you have more choice with what you can eat, similar to what you would have with a natural tooth. And also there's the benefit of longevity. Now the jury really is still out on how long an implant is going to last, but it could be something that lasts a lifetime, if it's done well and it's also well looked after. So it could also then be a more cost-effective option in the long run, because a denture will have to be replaced and a bridge will have to be replaced eventually, and likely these things will have to be replaced sooner than what an implant would be. What is all of this going to cost? Well, if you're getting an implant and a crown, a single implant, single crown in Ireland, I would probably budget somewhere between €2,500 to €3,500. Now, that is just an estimate. You may require extra procedures. For example, if your tooth has been missing for a while, you may need extra bone or a bone graft put around that site in order to give the implant more stability. Or if the implant is up at the back, particularly on top teeth, and the bone is quite thin or close to the sinus that you have here, you might need something called a sinus lift. So those are all things that you're going to have to go and do your assessment, and to be sure that there won't be any extra costs. So that is all something that you need to take to your assessment, and you can decide with your surgeon if those extra things are going to be needed. And that piece of information that you were thinking about at the start, well, a study showed that if a dentist was in the same position of a missing tooth, 92% of them would go for a dental implant.